Web browsers allow us to update our page dynamically using JavaScript. The interface used for interacting with the structure and content of our page is called the DOM. In this chapter, we're going to take a look at how to program the DOM. The Document Object Model, or DOM, is a programmatic interface to the document tree of our HTML and XML documents. The DOM is what allows us, using JavaScript programming in the browser, to interact with our page. Now, strictly speaking, the DOM is not limited to being used from JavaScript, but that's how almost all developers do interact with the DOM. So often are we manipulating the DOM in the browser with JavaScript that often the terms become confused. Since the DOM has cross-browser compatibility issues that can be very frustrating, often JavaScript takes the blame and is labeled a hard-to-use or inferior programming language. At its core, JavaScript is a powerful and fairly easy-to-use language. JavaScript is not without its quirks, of course, but most of the frustration arising from programming in the browser actually arises from the DOM interface and its quirks. Now, since there are so many browser inconsistencies and quirks in the DOM, JavaScript libraries like jQuery, Prototype, and MooTools have arisen, and they all provide APIs that allow us to manipulate the DOM in a consistent way. Now, these tools account for the differences between the browsers, and when we use them, they allow us to focus on our code and not the quirks of the DOM. The best place to get an idea of DOM compatibility issues is quirksmode.org. Quirksmode provides tables of feature compatibility and explanations of the quirks in specific browsers. Even though, in most cases, using a library like jQuery is the best course of action when working with the DOM, understanding how the DOM works is important when a library isn't an option, and knowing the structure of the DOM helps us write better code. Now, a typical web page looks something like this. We have a doc type at the top, an HTML tag, several tags embedded in other tags, and it forms a tree. So at the top of our tree we have a document with a doc type and an HTML tag. The HTML tag itself has children like the head and the body, and so on and so forth until we reach the very end where this node right here doesn't have any children. Now in the DOM, our web page is organized into a tree. And a tree consists of a single root node, and any node may have multiple child nodes as we've seen in the page. And these nodes themselves may have many child nodes and so on. In a tree, each node has exactly one parent and no more, the exception being the root node, which obviously has no parent. Also, a tree is acyclical, meaning you'll never have a loop when following a path down the tree. This is pretty clear because the way we write our markup in HTML, there is no way to represent an element being a descendant of itself. Now, every element in our document, whether defined in HTML or generated by using the DOM in JavaScript, exists in a node in our document tree. It's not just HTML tags that are nodes, but pieces of text, comments, and more. For instance, you may think that the only nodes on this page are the HTML head and title, but you'll notice that there are other nodes. For instance, this DOM examples itself is a node on the tree. It's a text node, even though it's not a tag. Now, even more interestingly is that the space between the head and the title tag right here, even though there's only white space in it, is also itself a tag. The doc type is also a tag, and even attributes can be represented as nodes in the document. By modifying this document tree using the DOM in JavaScript, we can dynamically edit the content of our page. In the upcoming videos, we'll be looking at how to read and modify our page's document tree. Now, before we continue on to the other exercises, I do want to make note that the DOM does have a lot of inconsistencies and is the source of a lot of frustration. In my examples, I'll be going over some of the quirks that you may encounter and how to get around them, but there are some quirks that are very, very difficult to overcome, and we shouldn't be reinventing the wheel on the problem. So in many cases, when we do need advanced features that the DOM doesn't provide, or that there isn't wide enough browser support for, that's a time when it makes the most sense to use a JavaScript framework. Now you can watch our other videos on jQuery and other JavaScript frameworks to see how those tools can help you program in JavaScript and the DOM. And now we have a basic idea of how the DOM is structured. In the next video, we're going to traverse our DOM tree using JavaScript.